All right, welcome. Today we're going to dive into an amazing story about how a struggling carpenter, a block of flats, and a crazy deadline actually ended up bending a really old, really important rule in contract law. Let's get right into it.
So, picture this. You hire a contractor, they get halfway through the job, and then, bam, they hit you with it. I can't finish unless you pay more. You're in a bind. The deadline's looming, so you agree. But is that new promise actually enforceable in court? It's a super common problem, and it's exactly what we're tackling today.
Okay, so to get our heads around this whole thing, we first have to understand one of the absolute bedrock ideas in any contract. It's what lawyers like to call the price of a promise.
And that price has a legal name, consideration. The easiest way to think about it is like a balanced scale. For a deal to be real, both sides have to put something of value on the scale. It's the this for that. I mow your lawn, you pay me $20. If one side of that scale is empty, the law usually says, sorry, that's not a real bargain, and the promise isn't binding.
Now this is where it gets really interesting. On one hand, you have this super strict old school rule. It says promising to do something you are already obligated to do, well, that's not fresh consideration. You're not adding any new weight to the scale. But on the other hand, you have the messy reality of business, where sometimes paying a little extra is the only practical way to avoid a total disaster.
And this exact clash is what brings us to our main story today. It's a landmark English case that put this whole problem under the microscope. Williams versus Raffi Brothers.
So, let's meet the players. We've got Raffi Brothers, the main contractor handling a big renovation project. And then we have Lester Williams, the carpenter they subcontracted to do all the woodwork. Seemed like a simple enough deal, right?
Okay, so here's the play-by-play. The deal starts at £20,000, but pretty quickly it becomes obvious that Williams seriously underbid the job and he's running out of cash. He just can't afford to finish. Now, this is a huge problem for Raffi because if the whole project is late, they have to pay a massive penalty. So to keep things moving, they promise Williams an extra 10 grand. Williams gets back to work, but then Raffi doesn't pay up the full extra amount. And that, of course, is how they all ended up in court.
So, this is the core of the whole case. Raffi's lawyers stand up and say, hey, that promise for more money isn't binding. Why? Because Williams didn't give us anything new for it. He was just promising to do the job he'd already agreed to do. And based on that old strict rule we talked about, you know what? They were technically right. But does that feel right to you?
So the court had a tough call to make. Do they stick to the old, rigid rule, or do they find a solution that actually makes sense in the real world? Well, what they came up with was, frankly, genius. And here is the big twist. The court started out by agreeing with Raffi. They said, you're right. On paper, Williams did not provide any new legal consideration. He didn't promise to work faster or do more. But, and this is a huge but, the judges didn't stop there. They decided to look past the technicality at the commercial reality of the situation. This is the aha moment. The court asked a really simple question. Did Raffi actually get something valuable when they made that new promise? And the answer was a resounding yes. They got what the court called a practical benefit. Just look at this list. They made sure the job would actually get finished. They dodged that big penalty. They didn't have to waste time and money finding someone new. The court decided that all of this stuff together was valuable enough to be the consideration for the new promise.
And with that, this case created a whole new test in contract law. We now call it the Raffi Doctrine, and it's a principle that really understands how business actually gets done.
So what is this new test? Well, it's pretty much a 5-step checklist. You've got an existing contract, right? Then, one party starts to think the other isn't going to make it to the finish line, so they promise more money to keep them going. And crucially, by doing that, they get a real, tangible benefit. And this last point is so important. The promise can't be because someone's holding you over a barrel. This isn't about blackmail, pay me more or I walk. It has to be a genuine renegotiation to solve a real problem. And there it is. If you can tick all 5 of those boxes, the court said that promise for extra cash is binding. It has to be paid. That practical benefit is the price of the new promise.
So, what's the big takeaway from all this? How did a dispute about some carpentry in London end up changing the entire legal landscape?
I think this quote from one of the judges in the case just nails it. The court's goal was to make the law reflect how honest people actually do business. They wanted to uphold reasonable commercial deals, not let people use tiny legal technicalities to get out of promises they made freely.
So let's be super clear. The Raffi case didn't throw out the idea of consideration. Not at all.
It just evolved it. It made the law more flexible and more realistic. It recognized that in the real world, a practical advantage can be every bit as valuable as a brand new promise.
And that leaves us with one final big question to chew on. Did this decision make business deals more practical and realistic? Or did it just make things more uncertain, opening up a can of worms about when a promise is really a promise? It's a debate that's still going on, and honestly, there are good arguments on both sides. What do you think?